Hello, VC. It's Eric. I am back to talk about something that's near and dear to my heart, and that is cowpunk. Now, I know that cowpunk is a tag that those people who are involved in the scene don't particularly like. Basically, it is country music mixed with the attitude and energy of punk rock, and the greatest purveyors of this sound, in fact, came out of the punk scene. Some of the records I'm going to show I've shown and talked about before. I figure if I show something long enough that people will start going, oh, I picked that up and I liked it. At any rate, let's get started. And let's talk about two punk records that you won't think about as being punk that I've shown before, that to me are one of the starting places, and that is Willie's Redheaded Stranger and Waylon's Honky Tonk Heroes. The reason I think these are punk records is because these two guys stood up to the Nashville establishment and said, we're going to do the records our way. Redheaded Stranger, Willie took it in and they said, oh, are these the demos? He said, no, this is a record. Waylon, he said, I'm going to pick the songwriters, I'm going to use my band, I'm going to pick the songs, we're going to do it my way. These are two landmark albums of the 1970s. The attitude is there. Waylon came out of the rockabilly scene. He was Buddy Holly's bass player. Those guys were the original punkers in so many ways. Johnny Cash giving the finger to the man. All of that suggests a punk attitude, if not a punk sound. And almost all of these songs you could have played by a punk band, and they're going to sound pretty good. All right, so moving into the 80s, you have the 77 punk rockers who are starting to grow up, starting to age, starting to embrace those George Jones records they were buying, or cassette tapes they were buying at the truck stops as they crisscrossed America. And you get bands like X, who a lot of people point to. This is Under the Big Black Sun. I don't consider them cowpunk personally, but I know a lot of people do. If you want to check out the Roots Your Side of X, this is a great album. Unfortunately, mine is damaged. I think I got it in this condition. Whatever. It's a record. It plays. It's a great cover, too. At any rate, so X is one of the bands that people talk a lot about. Oops, and I forgot something. Let's talk about somebody else here. Let's talk about Ricky Nelson really quick. Another rock and roll guy who then went country. In the 70s, he pioneered the country rock sound, which also played into the idea that you could mix these two sounds. All right, moving along. So in the 1970s, for those of you that seen the Cheech and Chong movie with the punk rockers in it, I don't know which one that is, I've just heard of it. There's a band in there called the Dills. This is Chip and Tony Kidman, who would later go on to be in a couple bands we're going to talk about. But they were very much a agit pop, Clash kind of band. And when the Dills called it a day, they partnered up with the guitar player from this band, the Nuns. Nuns were one of the great San Francisco bands. They opened up for the Sex Pistols' last show, along with the Avengers. One of my favorite bands from that era. Unfortunately, their recorded history lasted a couple of records, and then they got really kind of gothy and weird. But I really like the early Nun stuff. There's some classic songs on here, like Savage and Walkin' the Beat. Suicide Child is a stone classic of the era. At any rate, they took guitar player Alejandro Escovedo, and they formed Rank and File, which in my mind is the first of the 80s cowpunk bands. This was the first band to really want to take country music and add the punk energy. Now, you had the Gun Club doing blues and punk. You had the Meteors and you had the Cramps doing rockabilly and 50s rock and roll with punk. But Rank and File were the first band that I know of that went out there with the mission of combining the country sounds and the punk sounds. This is a great record. Well worth checking out if you can come across a cover or a copy of it. Great songs on here. These guys would go on to be in a band called Blackbird, which was kind of a weird industrial-esque band, and then would become Cowboy Nation, which I believe Headley's talked about, and he's talked about Rank and File recently. All right, so from here on out, I'm just going to be talking about some of my favorite cowpunk records. And these aren't in any particular order, although I'm going to save a couple of my favorites for last. So, Tex and the Horseheads. Very kind of 80s glam blues rocky stuff. This is on Bezbrain Records, which was a subsidiary of Enigma, who I've talked about before. They had 3 records, one of which is live. The second one looks like a heavy metal record, and it does get more heavy. But this one has their classic song, Oh Mother, which is well worth checking out. Good stuff. Next up, we have, and I've talked about these guys before, Thin White Rope in the Spanish Cave. These guys are part of the, I believe, the Davis, California desert scene. So those of you guys out there that like the stoner rock, there is definitely some of that in here. My friend Heath hit me to this band, and I quite enjoy them. I have not spent as much time with this band as I have with some of the others, but cool stuff, well worth checking out. All right, Green on Red. So there was this movement called the Paisley Underground that happened in California in the 80s, and it was punks that had started to become more garage rock, more 60s psychedelic. And Green on Red were tagged as part of that. This is their Gas, Food, and Lodging album. There's the songs. 16 Ways is a classic. We Shall Overcome is great. Sea of Cortez. Funny, they don't have the song Food, Gas, and Lodging on here. Or Gas, Food, and Lodging. But hey, it wound up being the title of this Allison Anders film, which is also a great 80s indie film with Ione Skye and Fairuza Balk. So then we've got, well, let's do this one next. So members of the Dream Syndicate and Green on Red formed Danny and Dusty. Kind of a weekend super project that a lot of interesting kind of stuff, maybe a little more Dylan, maybe a little more poppy. They do a cover of Knocking on Heaven's Door on this, but there's some great stuff. Some great kind of rough California country stuff on here. Worth checking out, and love that cover. Love that feel of that bar room. The Naked Prey. 40 Miles from Nowhere. They do a cover of Wichita Lineman on here. This is very growly, very low key. They also have an album I really like called Under the Blue Marlin, which I only have on cassette tape and I have on MP3. You can see this got a little bit of ring wear. I got a lot of these records back in the 90s when people were dumping their LPs. You know, they're not in great condition, but they're still here and they still play pretty great. And this was on Frontier Records, which is the same label as TSOL and Suicidal Tendencies. All right, moving on to the big 3. The Divine Horsemen. This is the offshoot of the Flesh Eaters, the great Flesh Eaters, were a really weird band that took me a long time to get into. Think more like free jazz, Tom Waits kind of thing, but this is them doing a more country thing with a male singer and a female singer, so you get that Lee Hazelwood, Nancy Sinatra counterpoint. They do covers of Field of Stone, Give Me Shelter, Little Sister, Voodoo Idol. There is an album that this is a companion to called Devil's River, which is my favorite. And for some reason, I don't have it on LP. I can't find my LP. I'm sure I didn't sell it, but I do have it on cassette tape. Great stuff. I really wish this would get reissued. The Divine Horsemen are definitely a band worth rediscovering. Okay. Blood on the Saddle. Poison Love. My favorite of their records. The song on here that people would know is they do In the Pines. And In the Pines. On their other record, they do Rawhide. But this is a great cowpunk band. Once again, male vocalist and female vocalist. Annette Zalaskins, their bass player and vocalist, actually was in the early version of the Bangles. Great record. One of my favorites. I think the title song Poison Love and Bed of Roses are just amazing. Great stuff. If you find this, pick it up. That cover art is pretty amazing too. And finally, I'm never going to talk about cowpunk without talking about my personal favorite, the Jet Black Berries. This is their album, Desperate Fires, which is not necessarily my favorite album of theirs, but I think it's the most consistent. The only reason that I'm saying that is because their third album, the current version that is out, is marred by an accident between the recording studio and the mastering studio. The songs on that album, I think, are arguably better. It's the production that keeps that album from being the one I'm going to show. And then I've shown Sundown and Venus multiple times. That's just more conceptual. This is, I don't know, Flying Burrito Brothers filtered through William S. Burroughs. This is maybe the most accessible of their records. I love the artwork. Once again, my copy is damaged and I need to find another one. Yeah, great songs, all originals. So let's see here. There is the Flesh Element, I believe. It's one of these songs. I believe it's the Flesh Element. It's actually in the Return of the Living Dead soundtrack. So anyways, Jet Black Berries, I love these guys. I love this record. It'd be great if somebody would get their catalog reissued. It would be amazing. And then finally, you can't talk about Cowpunk without talking about something I haven't talked about multiple times before, and that's the film Dudes, which is finally out on Blu-ray from Shout Select. To be honest, I've had this for about 3 weeks, and I've yet to watch it for various reasons. This is going to go in the DVD player, Blu-ray player soon. I need to see this in high def. Definitely an odd film, definitely a film of its era. It's one that I really like. It had a huge impact on my life, so check it out if you get the chance. So, Cowpunk. If you guys like Cowpunk, let me know what you like. I already know, Jason and the Scorchers. I have never been able to get into Jason and the Scorchers. I don't dislike Jason and the Scorchers. Just they never hooked me. I've got several of their records. The Hickoids, another band that I've had records by before. Yeah, they're okay. I don't love them. I don't hate them. Then there's a couple others that people talk about. The Dream Syndicate. I don't consider the Dream Syndicate to be part of the Cowpunk thing. They're definitely part of the Paisley Underground. At any rate, tell me what you like. Tell me what you didn't like. Especially if you like this kind of stuff. Guys like Andy and Headley. I know you guys dig this stuff. Billy Hurst. I hope that you check some of this stuff out because I think some of it you might like. Anyways, thanks for watching. I'll catch you all next time.